gift to you, Anthony Kerrigan.
Oh, thank you, Claire, and thank you, Christian, and thank you, ASAP, for giving me the opportunity this evening. Um, all to as well to all of you that are watching now and going to be watching back on YouTube as well in the near future. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you all had a fab weekend, as Claire said. So I'm first of all, I'm going to be talking about the Hellfire Club in Ireland, but before that, I'm going to introduce myself. So my name is Anthony Kerrigan. I'm a member of a paranormal psychical study group called GhostEire. Established in 2009, we have travelled all over the Isle of Ireland, reaching out beyond the veil, delving into the minds of numerous spirit beings, yet managing to maintain rational thinking towards strange phenomena. We honour the traditional spiritual divination practices such as seances, dowsing, automatic drawing and writing, as well as observing psychological and physiological behaviours of individuals on our team, and even those from the spirit world, including doing tests with the Myers-Briggs and articulation of speech, for instance. In addition, we analyse environmental factors which may contribute to supernatural phenomena. Collecting information and data is influential in evaluating a haunting. We have written 2 books based on the subject: The Rising of Haunted Ireland 2016 and Drowned Out Voices in 2022. Oscar Duggan, our publisher, would like to give thanks to him for helping us do that. We have appeared on several shows, TV shows, such as Spooked Ireland and Expedition X on Discovery Plus. We are presently on the verge of releasing a paranormal documentary series named Phantasm Collective, set to be aired on numerous streaming stations soon. We hosted the first paranormal convention in Ireland for over 10 years, the Day of the Unexplained, back in 2023. Furthermore, we interview respected people involved in the paranormal for Tina Field on our own podcast, the GhostEire channel, which is currently into its 4th season. Besides me, my colleague and wife Jennifer Kerrigan is in charge of the group, also in cooperation with our friend Sinead Houlihan. And as you see on the top left, that's members of the crew of Spooked Ireland. You also see the photograph next to that. That's Evan Hollow, as you know from Uncanny. That's Phil and Jessica and Expedition X with Sinead, our team member. That's myself, Erna B. Scott. If you've got good eyes, you can see Dr. Kieran O'Keefe and Steve Parsons. And then we got the Phantasm Collective, which will be out soon. That's myself on the left, Cameron, Jennifer, Derek, and Jessica. So, Go, a Hellfire Club in Ireland. Welcome to the Hellfire Clubs in Ireland. Now, first of all, I don't know, you probably let me know, Claire or Christy, in there. I'm going to give you a little task there, folks. If you notice, if you recognise picture A, just put an A in the comments. If you recognise picture B, just put B in the comments. If you don't recognise any of these buildings in the picture, just put C, letter C. I'll give you a few seconds. There's a lot of C's. Okay. Okay, so if you come into Dublin, you'll recognise photograph A, which is the Dublin Hellfire Club. I'll give a short synopsis on the background of that building. Picture B, I'll go back on it later on. The current structure, Hellfire Club, previously named Montpellier, is located on the top of Montpellier Hill on the outskirts of Dublin City. It was built in 1725 by William Connolly. William was a lawyer, landowner, and a speaker in the Irish House of Commons, from 1715 up until his death in 1729. He would use Montpellier during the summer months as a type of hunting lodge. Not long after its completion, the roof blew off as a result of a storm. The local community believed the devil had played a part in the incident. The assumed reason why they thought this? Well, it was because Conley had demolished a previous structure on the hill, a burial chamber, made up from stacked up stones known as a cairn. These stones were also used in the construction of Montpellier. After Conley's death, the property was sold. The Dublin Hellfire Club, established by Richard Parsons, 1st Earl of Ross, and understood to be active between 1735 until 1741, used Montpellier as their meeting spot, where it's believed activities of extreme indulgence took place, including the drinking of alcohol, sexual gratification, and also practices of the occult. Stories of devil worshipping and sacrificial ceremonies involving cats and servants are assumed to have happened. The reputation that beholds Montpellier has made it an invaluable location for film production crews to utilise in their paranormal shows when showcased in Ireland, and in more particular Dublin. Amazingly, there are not many buildings of Dublin that you can do a paranormal investigation in. The Dublin Hellfire Club has received widespread recognition from dark tourist explorers, paranormal groups, and investigators worldwide. Moreover, a member of our team, Sinead, made an appearance on the episode of Expedition X, which featured the Dublin Hellfire Club and the Hellfire Caves of West Wickham on the Discovery Channel. Now, most of us may be aware of the Dublin Hellfire Club and the tales associated with it, but the Hellfire Club of Ireland shouldn't be just ascribed to one lodge in the capital of the country, because I'm going to take you on a journey to another spot of the land, which in fact would have drawn a higher degree of people in gentry and even had a lady as one of its members. First, we travel to the quaint town of Askeaton, situated in County Limerick, and home to a red brick and stone building known as the Hellfire Club. This structure is located within the Askeaton Castle courtyard on a rocky island next to the River Dee. Formerly, the building used to be a barracks, dating back to circa 1636. By 1740, the barracks was in the ownership of the St. Leger family and modified. The Limerick Hellfire Club was founded in that same year. We visited the site and were given a merry walk around by a local tour guide. Our intention was at some point in the near future to carry out an investigation there. We wanted to delve deep into what the Limerick Hellfire Club did or didn't get up to during their social gatherings. Although pleasant at first, the tour guide got quite peeved and irritated with our gentle approach in the subsequent weeks and months. We had no other option but to give up on seeking permission to do a study at the Askeaton Hellfire Club. However, this wouldn't prevent us from looking up other spots in County Limerick to fill the void. Instead, we could go on to pursuit of individuals that were connected with the club. We had about 2 months of free time to pen down a date in the region. A year earlier, I came across a tale about the devil and its association with an old Georgian manor house in the village of Ballyneety in County Limerick. Here is its legend. A dark figure in a cloak appeared on horseback alongside the carriage of a Captain Edward Croker on the grounds of Barnagarda House. A conversation began, and so Edward thought it would be pleasurable to invite the man for dinner at Barnagarda. They stayed up all night, talking and drinking. The stranger collapsed from all the drink. A servant removed the boots from the stranger, only to discover a pair of hairy cloven feet, then later found hoof marks scorched into the flooring where he stood up before he left. I knew from experience that the devil, to a great degree, supposedly makes an appearance at these various Hellfire Club meetings. My first impression of Barnagarda House, when I looked it over the internet, was that it looked rather dilapidated and ruined. I got in contact with a person who owned Barnagarda and the land surrounding it. At first, it proved difficult in tracking the possessor down, but thanks to some helpful people, especially the Limerick ASSAP company that occupy parts of the land, I managed to get his phone number. The owner's name was John, yet he was busy at the time and we had other arrangements, so we held off going after the location. Roll on a year later, and after the Askeaton mishap, we decided to get back in touch with John, and this time he invited us to come along and visit Barnagarda for a pre-visit and investigation. Typically, on the day of the pre-visit, we got lost. Jen, my wife, and also a GhostEire team member, was the navigator. I was the driver. For some reason, we found ourselves on the outskirts of Limerick City. That wasn't right. Barnagarda House is located in the village of Ballyneety, 10 kilometres from Limerick City. It wasn't marked on a road map, but thankfully, after an hour or so of running around like headless chickens, we managed to find the village. I asked the shop assistant in the village service station for directions. Somehow we got lost again. We must have covered nearly all the roads of the village. With no other option, we gave in and parked the car up at the side of a road and gave John a phone call. Luckily, we weren't that far away. Not long afterwards, we found the entrance to Barnagarda. We must have gone past it about 3 to 4 times. We drove up a long, straight access road, parking up outside a couple of buildings. We were greeted by an on-site worker who gave us further directions to the house. First, we hopped over a galvanized heavy yard gate, then trekked a short pathway through a patch of woodland until we came across what looked like a stable yard. We nipped over another galvanized yard gate into a field. We were now in a piece of land accustomed to warfare. Well, sort of. It was Limerick Airsoft Camp. Stacked tyres, oil drums, and partial walled stoneworks gave protection against enemy fire. Mercifully, for this day, it wasn't in operation. In the distance, we could now see Barnagarda House in another field ahead. It looked immense from afar. As soon as we arrived at the ruined house, we knew we had uncovered a gem, but we would have to be careful getting about the place. We had to overcome a few obstacles to get inside the building. There was plenty of fallen masonry and bits of broken wood on the lumpy ground. It was tricky to get the next step, never mind walk around. Some spaces were just no-go areas due to nettles and straying sharp branches from dense bushes and trees. There was one part of the house that remained fairly unbroken and easier to tread. The cellars. What could have been stored here? It looked like your typical old manor house cellar, with red bricked, partitioned compartments for rack and wine, otherwise known as wine bins. Jen and I left the house about an hour later after all the exploratory checks had been done. Weeks leading up to the investigation, the secrets of the house and the Croker family, former owners of the estate, began to unfold. I found out that Banagharda House, for the most part, was a meeting spot for the Limerick Hellfire Club. We had compelling experiments lined up and striking questions that demanded answering for the upcoming investigation. We had a few cards up our sleeve too. As strangers on a night, it was our duty to entertain the otherworldly hosts. For a nice gesture, we'd open a bottle of plonk we had brought and take a few sups from it. But that didn't entirely go according to plan. Before I divulge more on how the paranormal investigation went, I'll enlighten you with Banagharda House's background. Banagharda House, a Georgian building, was built by Edward Croker in the 1700s. The Crokers were an illustrious family, which were an offshoot of the Linhams of Devon in England. Edward Croker, grandson of Edward Croker, who built the house, became bankrupt. He is noted as being a worthless spendthrift who brought up an arrogant race of blockheads of both sexes. Banagharda House is known by locals as I Doubt It Hall. This phrase comes from John Croker, great-grandson of Captain Edward Croker. When he was laying on his deathbed, his son Robert, a clergyman, told him, "There's a land fairer and better than this you regard." His father John replied, "I doubt it." This was a statement in regard to Banagharda House being an exceptional residence. As you can see, there's a portrait now coming up on the screen. A portrait hangs in Glyn Castle, County Limerick, which features the only female team member of the Askeaton Hellfire Club, a Margaret Celenda Benahasset, with 11 other male members. There is speculation whether the woman in the painting is in fact Celinda or Letitia Pilkington. 5 people have been identified in the portrait: Edward Croker of Banagharda with his son John, Wyndham Quinn of Adair, Thomas Royce of Nantonin, and the artist himself, James Worsdale. A piece of poetry from Dan Hayes, a member of the club, depicts what the Limerick Hellfire Club got up to. But if in endless drinking you delight, Croker will ply you till you sink outright. Croker for swilling floods of wine renowned, whose matchless board with various plenty crowned. Eternal scenes of riot, mirth, and noise, with all the thunder of the Nina boys. We laugh, we roar, the ceaseless bumpers fly, to the sun purples o'er morning sky. And if unruly passions chance to rise, a willing wench the fir grove still supplies. Today, only the shell of the 2-story building and internal high basement remains. In its heyday, the surviving rooms in the high basement would have been used to store wine, a type of wine cellars. And as you can see, these are the wine cellars here. You can see broken masonry there and a tree there on the ground towards the right. This is our visit was during the daylight hours, so we were lucky. A statue of Hercules once stood in the gardens of Barnagada. Also, fluted Ionic columns were situated by the porch at the front southeastern wing of the building. Barnagada was held by the Defence Forces during the World War II. During that period, it stated that beautiful fireplaces, marble stairways, and mahogany doors were intact, and that there were fine marble and stone statues on the grounds. That's not real, the statue of Hercules. It's not there anymore. Next, I'll explain some of the important stats from the base testing done on the evening of the investigation and the main types of experiments and sessions we planned to do. It was a summer's evening for the investigation. The environmental multifunction meter recorded an outside temperature of 19.2 degrees Celsius and an inside temperature in the basement of 21.4 degrees Celsius. The relative humidity was at 74%, which was quite high. It was cloudy too. The investigation began around 7:30 p.m. The lux was at 736 lumens, so still quite bright. Nonetheless, it would get dark midway through the investigation, so torches and LED lamps would be required later on. I monitored the sound levels. The conditions were favourable, but with no wind or traffic, etc. The location was fairly soundless, yet the noise from distant dogs barking and farmer machinery wouldn't go unnoticed. I determined the fault anomaly risk for the investigation to be at the high end of the scale, say 4 out of 5, with 5 very high being at the top, as you can see on the graph, that the chart there. Working outside, we'd be open to the natural environment around us. We'd have to be aware of noises from foxes, birds, bats, also any close encounters with flying bugs. With the basement in deterioration, fallen bits of masonry may cause unwanted anomalous speculation. Inside and outside was tricky underfoot, so our balance would be affected, which might lead to assumptions of being pushed or feeling unsteady. And the investigators for the evening were as follows: Anthony Kerrigan, myself, 66 investigations, Jennifer Kerrigan, 48 investigations, Sinead Houlihan, 30 investigations, Cameron Murphy, 8 investigations, and Kean Scannell, 2 investigations. I will fleetingly go over what type of experiments were involved and explain what results we got for them. The first session of the evening was a past enactment, which we can be referred to as the Singapore theory. The origin of the name Singapore theory is unknown. It may be in parts belong to Irish paranormal investigator Barry Fitzgerald, who coined the term back in the 2000s. But this method of investigating has been around for some time as a type of spiritual stimuli. In short, it is a form of ritual or action that may evoke a spirit entity to become active. If the spirit wrote poems, you would read a poem. If the spirit was a musician, then play their favorite instrument or song. Sometimes dress up in period attire or use and trigger objects from that era can attract a strong effect. If a particular event in history happened at the location you're doing, an enactment of what had happened or perhaps should have occurred, changing the history for that time, for instance, may bring back the memory for that spirit to manifest. Gambling took place at the Limerick Hellfire Club, in which subject to high amounts of money being put forward. The past enactment involved us playing a simple card game, blackjack, to get things going. Sinead played the part of a female servant, attending to the needs of the gamblers, Cameron, Cian, and I. To finish off the experiment, I recited a poem by Dan Hayes. We hoped to drink from the bottle of plonk wine in the course of the experiment, yet we failed to bring along a corkscrew. In the attempt to uncork the bottle, we ended up shattering the glass that was emptying the contents all over the ground. So that was great, wasn't it? Yeah. Moving on to the next experiment. Following that, we introduced for the first time the 12 Labours of Hercules platform. This platform was designed for standing on and for divination. It consists of 5 wooden squares, 3 foot by 3 foot, 4 raised sides that support a top. An individual stands blindfolded upright on top of the platform. Lack of sight gives the individual an altered and quite possibly calmer state of mind, which means a longer duration. The sense of floating may be felt. The aim is to pick up on any phenomena from reduced environmental stimuli. The top of the platform has 12 stars. Each star represents one of the labours of Hercules. Before the individual gets on the platform, a divination tool is used to discover where the person should be facing and where the left and right foot should be positioned on top of the platform. Afterwards, the individual selected to be blindfolded would take up the stance determined by the divination tool results. Each labour has a pennant, so whatever star the divination tool goes to might have a link to the history, a passing person, area, or the location. For example, the Selenian hind means cherishing your body and showing grace. We incorporated this experiment for the simple reason as Barnagada had a statue of Hercules in the garden. Plainly, we just wanted to gather information on where the legs of the statue were positioned at the base with the help of asking the spirit world. We had no records or pictures at the time of the investigation to influence the findings. Back to the experiment. I would take the form of the living statue standing on top of the platform. First, I would have to face in a southeastern direction out towards the gardens, with the back facing the front, southeastern wing. My left foot would be on number 3, the Selenian hind star, meaning inner mind, sensitive and grace, and my right foot on the 12, Cerberus, I think I'm pronouncing it right, meaning death, bravery and transformation. I stood blindfolded on top of the platform for roughly 10 minutes, as you can see in the bottom right picture. I felt relaxed and related the experience to floating on a cloud. I thought I heard talking, but to shed some light on this, I may have been misled, as the sound of speech could be attributed to the distant rambling noises from dogs and their owners in the neighbouring meadows, and possibly from team members muttering nearby. A few weeks after the investigation, I came across a picture of Barnagada on the website. It was of the front southeastern wing of the house and garden. Also in the image was the statue of Hercules. It was facing northwest though, yet the feet were positioned in a similar stance I had taken for the experiment. Furthermore, the platform I stood on was only about 20 meters from where the statue had originally once stood. So there's the old picture there, folks, there. I know you can make whatever you want out of it. I was facing the opposite way. I don't know if you can see the legs. It was kind of in a similar stance, and we weren't that far away from where it was positioned. And near the end of the investigation, Jennifer did a lone scrying session, in a former porch area of the house. This method of scrying has been used for centuries in discovering what history lies upon reflection. Mirrors are commonly used. You can also use water, black base, a crystal ball, or other reflective surfaces. If you gaze for a long period of time, your face might start to disappear, or you might see images in the background. Often experiences can include seeing different surroundings, a change of facial features, or take on a non-identical emotion. All in all, every one of your senses could be affected in doing this type of experiment. It doesn't have to stop with reflection. Visions can be perceived by using fire, smoke, the sky, or staring at the inside of your own eyelids, and so on. It can be effective in candlelight or very dim lighting. Skeptics advocate that low-level sight of edges, outlines, and lighting of the face causes hallucinations or illusions. During the session, Jen sensed a man wearing a monocle in his 60s with grey hair and a beard, with a walking stick in his possession. One bit of noteworthy information is that monocles became part of men's fashion in the 19th century. I already know that. We did 4 talking board sessions during the investigation. It was with this type of experiment we managed to acquire some fascinating information, which would once and for all clear up where the main Limerick Hellfire Club meetings had taken place. For those of you who don't know what the talking board is, I'll quickly explain. The talking board, which goes under other surnames like spirit board or Ouija board, is thought to have been around for centuries and is believed to be of ancient Egyptian and Chinese origin. The use of the board or other forms of it may have been kept underground due to it being frowned upon by society with the penalty of death. The Ouija board came to prominence in the 1800s with the advent of the spiritualist movement, the American Civil War, and a liberal Victorian society in Britain. Businessman Elijah Bond patented the planchette, which means little plank, a device used as connecton, which was sold with a board with the alphabet on it. There are many versions around the world. Christians and occultists have associated it with evil. Numbers 0 to 9, letters A to Z, goodbye, hello, yes, and no are normally printed on the board. I must point out, we had no idea that the house was home to a former Hellfire Club member when it first seeking access the year previously. However, that information came to light in a couple of weeks separated the pre-visit and the investigation. So it would be rude not to inquire about this subject, and so a set of questions were prepared by Sinead, Cameron, and jointly by Jennifer and I in relation to it. We had also a few questions set aside asking for details on the day-to-day running of the manor house. The first talking board session happened in wine cellar number 3 in the basement. Sinead's questions would be up first. At the beginning, we operated without any lighting for the first few she called out. The wine cellar was in complete darkness, so it wasn't surprising that the spirit world seemed to be spelling out gobbledygook. With a bit more lighting, we received further answers, although the responses were less than friendly. When Sinead asked what was the traditional drink that was popular here, in reference to alcohol, the planchette moved to N-O-T-E-L-L, no tell. If that wasn't telling us to mind our own business, then the next response to Sinead's question summed it up plainly. She asked, okay, so prostitutes, they were known to frequent here. So whereabouts did you get them? And how they got here? Whereabouts did you pick them up from? The planchette moved to STAYAWAY and 5. We'd imagined we were being warned. Some useful information did come to pass in that session. Sinead asked, so what topics were used here? What did you discuss amongst your members? And the answer was SADGRI RLS. Perhaps this falls back to prostitution, in which orgies were commonly believed to have happened at the gentlemen's club. This may be an accurate hypothesis because of Dan Hayes' poem. Sinead asked another question. Okay, so what was the most outrageous thing that happened here? The planchette moved to D, E, A, T, H, I, N, P, I, T, S. Did anybody fall in a hole at these drunken meetings? We asked the question. There are accounts of members being chucked out of the Askeaton Hellfire Club window into the River Deal during one drinking session. We asked which direction and how far away the pit was from the wine cellar. The pit was believed to be south from the wine cellars, 9 meters away, near the tree in the southeastern garden. It wasn't uncommon for country estate houses to have a pit for a number of uses on their grounds. It was revealed to us on the talking board that the pit was UNDERTHEROSES, under the roses. There may have been a suspicion of a cover-up. We would stay in the wine cellar for the second talking board session. Cameron would read out the questions from his list, yet the spirit world weren't really cooperating. Therefore, we all congregated up on the ground floor of the building at what have possibly had been the front hall. Cameron read out the same questions again, although the planchette was slow in reacting. On this occasion, we received intelligible contact. We got a year to when the Askeaton Hellfire Club was formed. The numbers 1, 7, 4, and 5 popped up. It was within the right stretch of time historians believed it was set up in County Limerick. There was about a 30-year gap from when the Hellfire Club on the island in Askeaton town was established, circa 1740, to when Balnagarda was allegedly built in 1774. Was the date wrong to when Balnagarda House was constructed? Well, the answer was unbelievably yes. About a month or so after the investigation, John, the owner, informed us that in fact the house deeds state the house was built earlier. In fact, there is a stone pillar in the grounds with the date 1740 inscribed on it. With this new bit of information, could we be correct in assuming that the portrait by James Worsdale and the poem by Dan Hayes were in effect created and influenced by the goings-on at Balnagarda House rather than at Askeaton Hellfire Club? Edward Croker is pictured in the painting and mentioned in rapturous favour in rhyme in the poem. We'll examine his role within the club later. Cameron went on to talk about Miss Blennerhassett, allegedly the female member of the club, seen in the James Worsdale's painting too. Whoever we were talking to presumably had a relationship with her. Miss Blennerhassett was said to have secretly hid before members of the club arrived. When she was discovered, she was sworn in and as a secret associate to keep her quiet. She was married to Arthur Blennerhassett, who died in a boating accident on the Lakes of Killarney in October 1775. Did she become a member of the Hellfire Club before or after her husband's death? Would Letitia Pilkington fit the bill as being the lady in the painting instead? Letitia was born in 1709 and died on the 29th of July 1750. After her divorce with Matthew Pilkington, a presbyter of the Church of Ireland, she became critical of clergymen. If there was prostitution, could the female member have been a lady of influence for passion or someone who the members had to keep quiet? Cameron asked what was the purpose of the club. The response was MONEYATTHEPYOUHARD. Money at the door, keep you hard. Having wealth seemed to be welcomed entry into the club. When Cameron inquired, did anyone get killed at the club, the reply was cheap ones. And with further questioning, it was stated that they were DARKONES, which presumably implied that the fatalities were slaves, those of darker pigmentation. There would also have been servants at Barnagarda. It is recorded during John Croker's lifetime that a washerwoman worked 3 days of labour and an elderly woman worked on the garden for vegetables and help with the children's shoes. It was only up until the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833 that slavery ended in the British Empire. Finally, when Cameron asked about occult practices, the planchette spelt out INTHCURCLEOFHONOR. This means a quality of worthiness, which would also again ascribe to those of high social status. For the fourth and final talking board session, we stayed in the front hall. I read out the questions that Jennifer and I had prepared. It seemed to be different entity coming forward from the spirit world on the board. In short, it was a female servant who went by the name of Katie Peters. She was a cleaner and was busy trying to keep the fire going on orders from a higher authority. She was told by some in the spirit world not to disclose anything and that we weren't received with pleasure. I asked where did the wine originate from, and the response appeared to be France. Nevertheless, we weren't able to define which particular region. We inquired about what type of statues were in the garden. The letters M, Y, L, O, V, E, O, F, S, K, Y popped up on the board. This reply could emphasize the Hercules statue and the constellation associated with the same name. Barnagarda would have had, and probably still is, a splendid sight to view the night sky, with little obstruction to the horizon. It'd be a great spot for stargazing. The topic of conversation turned to what other distinguishable feature was connected with the house. The letters T, H, came up again. Banagada was described as being one of the most beautiful and fertile land in its heyday. This would be ideal terrain for this greedy plant. During the big wind of 1839, extensive damage occurred at the domain, leading up to many unique trees being torn up by the roots. It brought to light the fine quality in which Banagada previously possessed. Near the end of the talk and board session, we requested information from the spirit of Katie about the cloven-hoofed stranger. The devil legend might have been employed by either or both locals and the owner's staff of Banagada for the simple reason of isolation, so to frighten and hide the merry frolics in which such members participated in. Excuse me, come on, let's go. We asked about the cloven-hoofed stranger to Katie. The reply on the board was WHILLFIND. Watch, he will find you if you run. Interesting, because we asked Katie what she'd be doing later after we left, and the answer was ITRYANDEVERYNIGHT. I try and run every night. She must be a fit woman. Either that or it meant something else. There is at least one fundamental explanation for the comment, that she wanted to get away, possibly escape. The devil story may have also been a presumed scheme by the owners to halt any escape from their workers. On a later development, a couple of months after the investigation, when speaking to John, he told us that a servant was supposedly buried in the garden grounds and the resting place was marked by a stone. Was this Katie? Was she in fact one of the sad girls? Was she even buried in a pit at the time, hidden underneath roses? So we return to the portrait of the Limerick Hellfire Club by James Worsdale. Was it actually done at the Askeaton Hellfire Club? We'd like to wager a bet that it was done at Banagada, along with the poem. Edward Croker instructed Worsdale to do the painting. This indicates Croker's supremacy. Edward is the figure pictured in the fine attire at the far centre of the table, raising his arm. You can see him there in the centre. Seeing that he is seated, some are standing, shows him his superior rank amongst others. In Georgian tradition, the host was the first person to raise a toast to guests. In the portrait, he is seen to gesticulate in attracting attention, possibly because of the surrounding splendour of the house. A dog can be seen sleeping on the bottom right, and the boy, John Croker, Edward's son, is seen blowing on a bugle. This might suggest to some that Edward Croker and his company were hunting earlier on in the day. If hunger played a part, then he would have needed a hearty meal after a long day of field sports. During Georgian times, it took time to heat and prepare food. Was Askeaton Hellfire Club able to facilitate this? Did Barnagarda have better resources, such as servants and staff, to cook, prepare, supply, and wait on members of the club? There was a considerable amount of land at Barnagarda, enough for a hunting party to delight in. During the Georgian period, the white tablecloth would be removed to indicate the end of dinner, and so any foul language or foolery was permitted. This is when the drinking games could begin. There is a lion paw design at the base of the legs of the wine cooler on the bottom left, and the chairs individuals are seated on. Greek architecture was renowned at Barnagarda, with lion and eagle animal schemes in the pavilion leading up to the entrance, which included pillars. These are the pillars here. The porch was another area dedicated to pillars with Grecian classical artwork. At the right of the painting can be seen the pillar. So you can see the pillar there just above the boy with the bugle. This is what we found out. Take a look at the photograph. Pillars can be seen on the black and white photograph. This is the porch area where Jennifer did her scrying, and is most likely the backdrop in James Worsdale's painting. As you can see there, that's where the Jennifer did her scrying, and over here would have been where I did my standing on the 12 Labours of Hercules platform, blindfolded. Then there is the boy. So we go back to John Croker, Edward's son. The young gentleman might have been in residence when Worsdale initially put paint to canvas. Could Askeaton, so we're going to ask this question, could Askeaton Hellfire Club actually live up to host such a gathering? Sorry. In 1838, a lady, Georgina Chatterton, described her visit to the Askeaton Hellfire Club. I was struck with the unfinished, ugly look of everything belonging to that old house. It is stamped with that reckless character which characterized the Irish in the last century. So she's stating most probably that it wasn't fit for purpose, that building. It was probably 100 years after the Hellfire Club it was supposed to have been formed, but still, I don't know. Back to Letitia Pilkington. If it was her in the painting, then it would date the portrait sometime before the 1750s. And she said she died in 1749. So the Hellfire Club was set up in 1740. And if it is her, not Celine Blennerhassett, then it would mean that Barnagarda has most probably was the Hellfire Club of Limerick. Now for the Dan Hayes poem and the wine Edward Croker supplied. This would be easily connected to the Barnagarda house and the wench in their fir groves. It must be a coincidence that the wine Croker renowned to have supplied for these gatherings may have come from the same surviving part of the house, the cellars in the basement of Barnagarda. Well, although Askeaton is a town and easily to meet up in, it would prove difficult in attaining a sexual urge in the public eye. Barnagarda had a fine supply of wooded area. Askeaton town, not so much. It would have caused a scene, especially to the locals nearby and to people visiting the area. Who knows what the Limerick Hellfire Club got up to? It was an elite secret group, and the possibilities are endless. One thing is for sure. Barnagarda had a unique mystery to it. Lastly, there are a few people I'd like to show my appreciation to. I'd like to thank John Yona of Barnagarda for his generosity in allowing us to be at the site of Barnagarda and to aid us on our investigative work. Also, members of our team, Jennifer, Sinead, Cameron, and Kean. Finally, to the author, David Ryan, who wrote the book Blasphemers and Blackguards, the Irish Hellfire Clubs. His examination, attention to detail, and hard work is greatly appreciated and was pivotal in our study of the Limerick Hellfire Club. I'd also like to say thank you to Claire and Christy and also to you members of ASSAP for listening in this evening. And good job of still running. I wasn't too sure we start recording. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. That was excellent talk. Really interesting to find out about the other Hellfire clubs and what used to go on there. Christian, I don't know if you are available to take questions with your dulcet tones.
Yes, not a problem, not a problem. I literally just ducked away just to get a quick drink and I thought I would bring in a candle and some fire for the said purpose of. All right, so I guess perhaps most of the questions here are actually by myself as I was browsing down as we were talking. So,
can you see my screen? Is that can you see my screen?
I can see yours. Yeah, let's just
so I don't have to want to show. Yeah, sorry.
Let's switch it to standard view so I can see you. And multi-speaker. There we go. And since what will happen, therefore, is that whoever's talking will appear full screen. So I guess my first question was about the statue of Heracles. I ultimately asked the question. I think David's answered it quite concisely. Is what was the purpose? Do you think of them having effectively a Greek demigod statue in the location? Was it really just to kind of draw on the power of the demigods of the past and the power of like the Greek and the Romans?
I suppose they were all into that kind of. To be honest, I wouldn't know. To be honest, there wasn't anything to do. I think it was just probably a way of showing with the art that came out in that time, just to show how lavish they were and how they were the stars, celebrities of those days, and they could bring everyone in and all these people and show it off, really, to be honest there. In reference to the Hercules, I don't know whether it's to do with some secret kind of order or some secret kind of like a magic, the occult or anything like that. But I know it's, I love astronomy myself there, I know it's to do, I love astronomy and mythology there, so to be honest, it's the statue I think is still around, but I think it went to a hotel somewhere else in Ireland. So
So you're sharing the screen. Would you mind stop sharing the screen? Because what will happen therefore?
Yeah, stop.
It'll be our faces. There we are.
There we go.
That's much better now. You're not this small hiding in the corner. Because I did quite a bit of study on like the Greeks and the Romans and stuff. I quite like what they get into in our country over here and how powerfully influenced they have over democracy and so on, the way we rule of law and order. And I've always been fascinated by the connection, particularly between the Celtic side of Ireland and the Greek world. I guess there would have been transporting of people, transporting of goods, services. And I've always been fascinated by the story of the Argonautica, which is the story of the Argo, Jason and the Argonauts. And I've always been fascinated by the crew list because, of course, there's a couple of Greek priestesses, i.e., particularly Morrigan Le Fay, who's on the crew manifest of the Argo. And here we have Heracles, being also the son of Zeus and so on, heavily connected there. So I always wonder.
I suppose it's another thing as well. They did turn themselves from celebrating the Irish gods, goddesses there,
Yeah.
So they're kind of distancing themselves away from Irish culture, So there's probably one way of worshipping a different god, like from Rome or Greek, instead of the Irish at the time then.
That would make sense, I guess, because you have like what do you call it? The Eleusis mysteries and so on. The sharing of the wine. I guess the idea of these are a secret society of essentially wine drinkers who the wine has been tainted with something a little bit stronger than just your alcohol. These people are tripping balls and saying who knows what. So Darren Hudson asks a question here: is there any connection therefore between the West Highcombe Hellfire Club and the Irish Hellfire Clubs, or is it just in name only?
I think it's just the name only. That I think the Limerick, well, the connection with the Limerick one to the Dublin one would be I think James Worsdale. I think James Worsdale was connected with the Dublin. He was part of the Dublin Hellfire Club, which is very interesting. How Edward Croker, you could say the head of the Limerick Hellfire Club, or instructed him to do the painting. So how influential was the Limerick Hellfire Club compared to the Dublin Hellfire Club? I don't know, but probably, I don't know. I think the Limerick Hellfire Club had more power. You know, I don't know, with High Wycombe, I don't think there is any connection there. Apart from, I think Parsons, maybe. Was he over in Wycombe? Not too sure.
I'm not sure. He makes the comment that it sounds like the British and Anglo-Irish aristocratic members clubs, effectively, a bit like Soho House today. So
yeah,
bit of a man's meeting club. You know, you get your women drunk, have some alcohol, have a bit of a party, a bit of an arrangement. It sort of makes sense.
Yeah, there's no YouTube now. I mean, there's YouTube now, not back then.
That's a good point, actually. YouTube has become like the gentlemen's clubs. So I made the comment. You talked about how you were using your spirit board, your Ouija board, or talking board, I think you called it. So, yeah. And you mentioned about how when the lighting was subdued, there was obscure answers, nonsensical answers. They didn't quite know where the spirits didn't know where the glass was moving the clapchat to. So wouldn't this physiological explanation of that be it's the user's idiomotor motion? So it's only when the lighting came up, you guys knew where the letters were that spelled it out. So, I mean, how would you consider that?
Yeah, I do. I have to agree with that there because you just, to be honest, I don't know what the answer is. Like, you know, I suppose the thing is, if we're talking to spirits or entities that are conscious, then obviously they can answer back with us. They can use telepathy. Who's to say it's just telepathy? He's just stuck with us. You know, we could be in a daydream doing it. It might not be our muscles. We might be doing it unknowingly, unconsciously ourselves. Like, yeah, I do agree. That's why we tried in the dark, just to see if it would work without, you know, because I had a night vision camera. I was the only one that could see. I was off the board there, you know. So, but no, it didn't. So it's hard to see whether I agree with that kind of thing there, and that's why. It's out of all those questions, and there was only say there was around about 20 we did each day, and you could say around only about, as you could see, those that came up with the relevant ones there. Like, so there's only about 16 out of 40, but below 50%. You know, it's a hard one there. Like, I suppose it's like any other form of divination, like dowsing or like that. There's that human influence there, but I don't know how the mind is in that kind of situation, you know. So whether the unconsciousness of ourselves is tapping in with their unconsciousness, or their thought transferences, choreography was, or whether it's just you know, ideometer effect, like, you know, it's up to debate. But that's why we put these different questions in to see, and what came out with that investigation, I suppose it did help us locate the dates, which I had to ask the owner, John, several times. Are you sure that's the date? I asked him, is that the date the building was built, 1740? Because it says on records that it's 1774, and he says no, it's 1740. So it was influential in that, and it probably backed up what we found out then afterwards, then, that obviously this painting, we were asking questions in reference to Askeaton Hellfire Club more, with those other questions, not to where we were and currently there. But I do agree, it's just test all the time there, you know.
Yeah, test them and let them test you.
Ouija board.
Yeah. So something actually happened. You know what? The very moment I posted that question to you, something actually happened here in this room. So as you can probably see in the background here, I've actually got some lights in the background. So basically, if I was to plug this into my PC, and basically these lights jump up and down, they got a bit of water and then react to sound. These are not plugged in because I got an earphone plugged in. But when I posted that question, these just jumped like crazy. And they're not plugged in. I was sat there looking, I was like, what the hell was that? So
It's good. It's good to do these little tests as well. We do ourselves there with the new series coming up. We're doing working with like acoustic cameras, working with EEG devices there, seeing how people's brain reacts and all that. Under seances and all that kind of stuff there. But phenomena there, it's. I don't know. People experience that, I hope at least it's not too much. Is it plugged in now?
no, it's not plugged in. I would sat there waiting for it to go off again. So, but it hasn't gone off again yet. So, oh man, hopefully it will. We can have some kind of conversation with some kind of spirit using a yes and no messages.
Yeah.
So, in terms of question, I think that kind of rounds it out. Lots of interesting comments here. Thank you, Anthony. Interesting talk. Very interesting. Thank you very much. Another great talk from ASSAP. Wonderful. Very interesting. So lots of comments about what it is. But so what drew you to the topics of the paranormal in the first place? How did you really get tickled into this world?
As you said, yeah, like Claire said at the beginning, I suppose there's loads of things like ghost watching and watching X-Files, Most Haunted, and having accidents in my life there, near-death experiences there. I suppose, you get older and you get less fit. I was playing rugby at the time, so... I had to go up at a certain age. I'm not going to make the Munster team or play in the Ireland team, so I give it up there. So, but it's a fascinating. I've always had it. I've been Richard Jones. I think he wrote a book about haunted places in Britain and Ireland. There, I read that, and it's the interest grew there. And it's there's a lot of interesting people that I've worked with there, and in Ireland. I suppose in Ireland, it's kind of still, to be honest there, I think with the paranormal, like say with TV shows and all that, we have, especially with like the BBC with Uncanny, getting supported there. I suppose Discovery, Warner Brothers helped towards that. In Ireland, we don't have a proper national networks that showcase what people do in Ireland, Virgin Media, we have it, and RTE, but they're still showing shows about people buying houses, showing what the posh people do, redeveloping their houses, and that's what's happening. Yeah, like that. It's houses being done up all the time there, and people can't afford it there. But that's going off a different subject there. But the paranormal that still gets laughed upon in this country there, and
that draws you to one question then. So, is there still such a prevalence of folklore? Is there still such a prevalence of ghosts, mythology within the certain families and the villages and the towns that are around? Is that still quite a prevalent thing? Because I think when we think about Ireland, we still kind of think of it as green, rural kind of places. Is that still the case?
Oh, it is, yeah. If you go outside of Dublin, it's green, it's very green there, folklore, I suppose it's changing there. I suppose if you're looking for it, I suppose with the Irish talking communities, you'll find a bit more of it there, the more rural you go, like Mayo, Galway, and Meath, where there's still, ancient sites around, it's still kind of raw, but in terms of, I suppose it's the same as anywhere, I suppose Ireland's kind of similar to Scotland and Wales, those kind of countries there, we're all kind of similar to Celtic countries, and I suppose, I wouldn't say it's dying out there, but I suppose I don't know how people determine what a paranormal is or a paranormal investigation is in Ireland these days, because it goes on to urban exploring and it goes off to that kind of scale where people are going into houses and looking up, or going graveyards is quite common now as well, people watching more shows on graveyards, which is beautiful as well, but I'll spend enough time in those myself if I get there.
So there is a question that's dropped up. It's from Peter Ankerton. It says, the experiment by blindfolding the participants, as the spirits should be still able to see or not. I've got, quite famously, there was that Penn and Teller bullshit episode where they blindfolded a person and they rotated the Ouija board 90 degrees. And of course, they actually still responded and thinking it was still where it was before. It's always good to test these things. So if spirit are present, should they also correct? Because the spirit knows where it is now.
It is. It's interesting. Like when I was standing on top of that platform there, I suppose you think you'd be more unbalanced, but actually felt more balanced, which is weird because you're not where you feel more unbalanced being at a height. and seeing what's around you. But when you're able to keep still on top of a platform, blindfold, it's actually more stable for a bit anyway.
And what locations do you have in mind that are coming up that fascinate you, that perhaps you haven't been to yet?
We're actually going back to County Limerick in another few months' time to a bar. I think it's the oldest bar the oldest bar in County Limerick, dating from the 1700s again. I think the same time period as this, so we don't know what could be. It's near the same region as well. It's near Loch Gur. We're going back there. Also going to California soon, so the USS Hornet. So hopefully that's completely different now because we're so used to like the bars, like, but it's only 2 rooms, and then you go into a warship which is 14 decks. So it's going to be unusual there, but it's good to do, like, ourselves as a team of GhostEire. We don't investigate, like, we've only done in the past 15 years we've done about 80 odd investigations. So we're talking about, I don't know, just about 3 or 4 a year.
Okay.
So we don't go out every weekend investigating as well, because it's good to do the research afterwards there. And because we involve the kind of spiritual side, the divination side, we review with the experiments, like, say, Ouija board, where the planchette or glass has moved to, which direction, how many times it's gone around, what letters, there's loads of analysis afterwards there. I just put it into paper there.
I was just curious. I mean, Wendy's put here that she's an Irish person feeling the gaze of the colonial Brits here. But it does a question. I mean, so as at one time in history, there was, of course, quite a large migration to the United States on the East Coast, and of course, there is a large Irish population across the eastern seaboard of the United States. I mean, how much do you think they took of their superstitions and beliefs to that area?
Oh yeah, they would have taken a lot of around the world there, even Australia and places like that. I suppose it's one way of keeping, feeling back at home again, and as I suppose we're one of the most travelled race around there. It's hard to say. Like, I still like Ireland's. I'm Irish myself. My parents are Irish there. I was brought up in England there, and my dad used to tell me those stories there. So I think there's a lot of influence all over the world, and I suppose it's, for a small nation, we do fairly well with only 5 million people in it.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
I was kind of my thought process really was going to. Do you think they actually exported their spirits as well? Like the Wendigo and the Banshee characters and leprechauns. Have they found themselves into US kind of folklore in those areas as well? It'd be interesting to find that out.
Yeah, I suppose there's equivalent in every kind of, like the Morrigan and all that. There's the equivalent of that goddess or demigod around in all different kind of cultures, their mythology there as well. So yeah, there's a good few films that need to be done in Ireland. I think there should be one of the mythology, the Morrigan and people like Brian Boru as well. It needs to be done. But Grace O'Malley is another a living person that actually did exist. Grace O'Malley, the Pirate Queen. That you could do a series on her. But I think with everything done on TV with Grace O'Malley, there's been bad luck for some reason. It's never come to air, or stage performances as well. They've not been, for some reason, it's never come to fruition. Like,
I'm always surprised that there's not TV productions on the scale of like Game of Thrones or Vikings or Last Kingdom on Ireland. That kind of mythological style of battles and wars and warriors and so on. For the Irish king lists and so on, the story of like the Tahafti, the Nan and the Danann people, and their battle against like the Fomori and the birth of Lunasol and so on. I'd love to see that, on a film on TV, and it certainly deserves to happen. But I wonder if anyone would actually give it the green light.
I know it's I don't know. I suppose you got Game of Thrones that happened up in Northern Ireland as well. Like mostly, Vikings was over here filming as well. I think that's the thing, is people come to Ireland for the scenery, but they don't actually take up the history and bring it out to light in film either.
maybe that's something that perhaps you got to do. You got
I'll
to
probably
inspire
start.
people.
Yeah, maybe I'll stop doing the paranormal, start writing on mythology legends. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I think it's about 20 past 8 now, I guess. Claire, are you still hiding in the background in the green room there?
I'm still here. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks again, Anthony. That was an excellent presentation. Really good to hear from you. And I hope that when you're at the Wickham Paranormal Conference in a few weeks, you might consider going to the West Wickham Hellfire Club. It'd be you're going to be so close to it. It'd be a shame not to go while you're there and check it out.
Yeah, I should do that. I have my face painted on the way there as well.
Oh, yes, no, we were talking about this last night. Everyone, there's a conference coming up in Wickham. It's just a one-day conference, but it's bookended each side, I think, with celebrations and ghost walks and things like that. And the information is on the Facebook page if you want to check it out. It's called Wickham Paracon, and it's sort of jointly set up with Kieran O'Keefe, I think, as well. So when I spoke to Anthony last night about how this talk was going to go this evening, I think one thing we were very excited about, both of us, was the fact there's going to be a face painter there. So, because to do that anymore. So, but yeah, seriously, thanks, Anthony. It was great to go back home, albeit virtually tonight. And thanks for mentioning Mayo, because it is the best county, as we know. And
Neil Sagum.